There's always a moment in your time when my moment is actually 97, 98, where there's a, I think, big Asian financial crisis, where actually I was in the banking at the time, and there was just a moment of your time. All of a sudden it struck you like, what am I doing in this life? And if I can have another new career after like 15 years on the banking side, how can I utilize my background to work on making something more impacting?
Welcome back. How are you this week? First, a thank you to our newest patrons, Amelia Donker, Georgina Stevens, Brian McKenney, Dina Gershony, and Ben Bradley. These donations are so appreciated, and as a patron, you can also join our monthly video calls and our chat group and connect with other patrons who are contemplating similar things to you from all over the world. If you'd like to join us in this way, please visit www.thefutureisbeautiful.co/community. And within our sister project, Presence Collective, we are this month exploring the theme of breath, how breathing techniques can support us in different aspects of our lives, and in some cases, even save our lives. I remember reading a book about the Mumbai terror attacks in the Taj Hotel, and there was a woman there who was a yogi, and through her pranayama had learnt how to hold her breath in and out for long periods of time. This meant that when the attackers checked for people who were breathing, she was able to play dead and thus save her own life. An extreme example, I know, but it shows how this skill can be useful in unexpected situations. Not to mention how the simple act of taking a slower breath, breathing in and out for a count of 4 can change our state. Let's do it together now. So take a deep breath in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. Even that one breath can bring a sense of calmness and connectedness to our bodies. If you want to join Presence Collective, click on courses on our website and you will see all the information there. It has been wonderful to be back in London and see many of you for one-to-one sessions, or at the event I was speaking at last weekend with St. Ethelburgers, where we were exploring the question, what if climate change was our greatest teacher? There is a lot that is ripe from that discussion and the general chats I've been having with some of you as we've spent some time together, and I'd like to honour that and find some time to take it deeper. A couple of the key things that came up for me when contemplating that question was that everything in this life is a teacher, and what happens if we allow ourselves to not live in crisis mode, but actually to use the practices and wisdom that we have access to so that we can approach our challenges, both personal and collective, from a place of centeredness, heart, and soul. What if we let go of the idea that if we are not panicked or in grief, that we don't care? What if we allow ourselves to move through the cycle into the seeing with new eyes and the going forth phases? What if we're still allowed to enjoy our lives and love that we are here as part of nature with the earth? It's an ongoing inquiry, of course. There is another event in London that I'm speaking at later this month, which has been curated by Hannah Close at Experimental Thought Co. It's on February the 29th. I am on a panel there, as are other guests from this podcast, such as Mac McCartney, Bo Huntress, Vinay Gupta, and Indra Adnan. I feel it's going to be a very special day. It's called Human Nature Stories, and this is how it's framed. Humans have woven stories since the dawn of time. Speckled across the pages of our existence is the ink of myth, fable, and folklore, and the echoes of adventurous anecdotes and worldly tales linger from centuries ago. Using a variety of tools such as language, art, movement, and sound, humans have crafted narratives about what it means to be alive in the world for millennia. Whilst our cultures may have changed, the essence of human nature remains intact, buried deep within the scriptures of the soul. Fictive or not, we have used stories to make sense of things throughout our evolution, both individually and collectively. In an undefinable world filled with undefinable phenomena, such as consciousness and love, we are compelled by our very nature to understand all that we experience, and in our attempts we advertently bring forth beauty through poetry, music, revolutionary conversation, and so on. We also unwittingly bring forth delusion. Some argue that the human desire to forge meaning through such methods misses the point. Others argue that meaningless meaning-making is the point. Today, the way we see ourselves in the world is a dark tale, one in which a separation from nature, spirit, and wisdom has caused a rift in our interhuman and human-earth relations. Our world is made of stories. How might we envision a new one in a time of crisis? From bedtime stories to the grandiose meta-narratives of our time, expert, interdisciplinary, enlivening wisdom from a band of tale-telling poets, artists, and philosophers. That's a little bit of a taste of what this event is going to be exploring. And you can find the link on our website if you click on this interview, and it will show you how to get tickets from the Experimental Thought Co. For this week, we're talking about microfinance, and after so many episodes that were recorded in Indonesia, we have an Indonesian as our guest. I am speaking to Meynar Sihombing. Meynar is passionate about collaborating with others to empower women and low-income communities. She started her career as a commercial banker and graduated with an MA in International Development from the International University of Japan in 2002. She was awarded the Joint Japan-World Bank Graduate Scholarship for her studies there. Meynar has over 20 years of experience in financing and developing sustainable financial models within the Sustainable Development Goal-related sectors, including water and sanitation, health, agriculture, and sustainable food and commodity supply chains. She has more than a decade of expert-level experience in microfinance and SME development, including senior-level positions with the IFC, Mercy Corps, and other international NGOs. Following the Aceh tsunami in 2004, she worked to support revitalization of the Achenese economy by helping the micro and small businesses sector recover, thus generating long-term employment and strengthening local economic actors. Meynar specializes in finance and business development and is a strong advocate and promoter of startups in product development, distribution, and venture solutions for young entrepreneurs. Meynar has worked with and empowered hundreds of microfinance institutions, both within Indonesia and around the world. In this conversation, we explore the question, how can business and finance empower communities to grow? I hope that you are inspired by this episode. Welcome to The Future is Beautiful, with me, your host, Amisha Gadiali. On this show, we explore the weave between politics, spirituality, creativity, and sustainability. It's time for us to move beyond silos and into an integrated way of being. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a brighter future. This is the revolution. Despite the challenges we face as a global community or the pressures that we meet in our daily lives, when we stop and dare to dream, to ask ourselves the big questions, and to share what we are already doing, we create the future that we wish to wake up for. That future is beautiful. I am absolutely delighted to be here with you, Meynar. Thank you for coming onto the show.
Me too, and thank you for inviting me to be in the show.
Of course, it's been a beautiful flow of synchronicity. My friend and listener of this podcast, Jonathan Perugia, told me to come and visit Taman Petanu, this beautiful eco neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And so yesterday I came and he introduced me to Melissa Lowe, and I met her and she showed me around. And then she introduced me to Petra Schneider. We were talking, and absolutely Petra will come on the show another time, as I hope Melissa will. She said to me, I know who you must interview, and that you were coming here today And so I'm very grateful that you've made time to have this conversation, as I know it's a short visit and that you have a lot that you're doing here and a lot of collaboration that you're working on.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it's wonderful to be here just now, to be here talking with you and your other friends. We might hear them laughing sometimes from downstairs, and getting a glimpse of some of the incredible work that you've done and what you've been exploring.
Mm-hmm.
I first learnt about microfinancing through Muhammad Yunus's work and have been very inspired by that. I imagine that some of our listeners won't know what that means. So it would be wonderful if you can tell us a little bit about how you came into this kind of work, like what took your journey there, and also what microfinancing is and how it works, and also why we need it.
Okay.
So there's a lot of questions there.
Okay, yes. Thank you, Amisha, again. My background, actually, I started with working in a commercial bank. At that time, banking is always a sophisticated work, but my work mainly in international banking. So it gives me an opportunity to understand international trading and things like that. And most of my clients are actually corporations. And there's always a moment in your time when my moment is actually 97, 98, where there's I think, big Asian financial crisis, where actually I was in the banking at the time. And there was just a moment of your time. All of a sudden it struck you like, what am I doing in this life? And if I can have another new career after like 15 years on the banking side, how can I utilize my background to work on making something more impacting? Then was actually trying to find where you fit it with all this banking knowledge and things into more impacting. Then I was blessed actually to get a scholarship to study international development in Japan. I was granted a scholarship, and that's what actually turns my life different way. And I thought like, okay, these finance things, this understanding can also help the target market, if I would say, that never in my mind would be my attention, which is the small and micro businesses and household. So that's actually my first understanding that, yes, I can use this knowledge and everything to work more, giving an impact. So then starting that, I was searching for different job. Again, that's always the challenge with work, is that my work for many years are in banking. So when I was wanting to work in international development in finance, okay, I do not have friend. Where is the reference coming from? But it took me numbers of years, and I'm blessed that finally I came to work with the World Bank Group, the International Finance Corporations, where actually I learned how actually the development, and then where actually you can put impact investments and then bring development, scale it up into a more, I would say, opportunity for the low-level income people getting access to finance. So that's kind of like my first encounter on development finance. Then it again, after a couple of years of work, I thought like, oh, I wanted to really work on ground, where actually bringing my hand directly working with them. So I took the chance to work with a non-governmental organization in access to finance, working in Aceh, where I support the program of microfinance, restructuring numbers of microfinance institutions, which is in Indonesia, also rural banks and cooperative, structure the organizations for better, especially after tsunami. It gives me numbers of year experience where it is actually challenging. But what I love about that is then really, I would say that serving corporate, I mean, nothing wrong with that. Again, it's another just different kind of like target market. But going into supporting the micro small business with its own challenge, complication, opportunity. Actually, I was learning, getting inspired by these people, how they try to survive, how actually I learned of how the inclusion in finance is actually the more lower, the more challenging. So that's where I sort of like, maybe it's not like a decision, but at the time I thought like, okay, this is the sector that I would like to work in, to be involved in the longer term. So it's like inclusiveness of this micro and small and lower level income people household into a more, I would say, promising services of the financial sector. That's where actually I learned more about the microfinance by Muhammad Yunus, where the inspiration is actually the lower level income people is actually as responsible and probably are more responsible in the opportunity of them getting financing, getting support financially by a formal financial institution. So they are also as responsible. So you can calculate the risk. It shows actually the work of Muhammad Yunus actually shows, which is followed by many other financial institutions, that these lower level income people are actually a responsible person when you are giving them a chances to be included in the financial system. The thing that I love about that is they are the dynamic of all these businesses, street vendor and then agriculture farmer. They're very, very dynamic, where allows you and push you to learn beyond just a standard of financial work, financial services. When you talk saving, you talk loan, you have to be much more creative because of the fragility of the people, the community, the household that you are working with, the infrastructures that supporting them. You have to be more creative. But my experience for long about in this work is that without really a passionate and genuine passion to them, it is hard. It is challenging, if I say.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Before we go deep into the details, I want to say it's so inspiring that you listened to the call and you made a change, because I think often after someone has been in a career for 15 years, a sense of, oh, well, this is all I can do now can come in. It's really beautiful. I'm always inspired when I hear of people that make that decision. Actually, I can use my skills and I can do something that is more impactful, where I'm able to contribute my skills in a way which contributes more to the beautiful future that we're creating. And so thank you for making that jump. And I'm sure that will inspire many people listening to know that they can do that too.
Right. And to be honest, Amisha, it is not just like, okay, I want to do this and then you move. It comes with a process of learning and thinking, looking at this opportunity and things. But I would say I'm grateful, at least to myself, is that I have the courage to just do it.
Can you give us a little understanding of what's happening in Indonesia? Maybe you can give us some basics, because I think many people won't understand how vast and diverse Indonesia is, and how different the cultures are within Indonesia, and also a picture of the poverty and where some of the issues are.
Mm-hmm. I think I'll probably explain in the more general terms, not in terms of number. Some of the advantage and also the challenge in this country is because we have more than 1,000 ethnicity. So that alone is a challenge when we want to look at universality. That's one thing. Second, the country itself geographically is already divided into islands, where moving from one island into the other is costly. With the current, I would say that the country is developing its infrastructure in maritime, which is, I would say that we're backwards in that, has been one of the challenge in Indonesia in terms of development. So in Indonesia, there are some area, which is the west, that are developed, and then goes to more eastern, which is underdeveloped. So there is a very big gap in a sense of development, and particularly in economic development. In the report that are saying that Indonesia are now considered as the middle income country, but if we took the west and the urban, it may be true, but if we're looking at spread on the rural side and the eastern part of Indonesia, the gap is huge. So there's a lot of work actually still in Indonesia. More than 60% of our population, yes, indeed, is in the west. So that's actually make it more challenging, because when you want to develop the eastern part of Indonesia, then the numbers of population are more or less, and where workers are less, and urbanization is one of actually the problem. So in Indonesia, I would say one of the biggest challenges is actually the gap of the economic infrastructure. So when we're talking about the poor in Indonesia, I would say in some area, the poor is not necessarily directly into the economic, but because the lacking of infrastructure, they pay much more for their basic compared to the one even in the city. For the one in the city, they pay electricity actually much lower than the one is in eastern part. Why? Because the infrastructure is not there. So even with the same amount of money they can make for 1 month, they pay much more in their expenses, but with a lower quality. So the disparity, I think that's the issue a lot in Indonesia. And we have actually problematic with our youth that I cannot say numbers, but I would say that large part of our youth in Indonesia are, I would say, educated in high school, even not in high school, in secondary school, where it become a challenge when we are facing into employment. So that's another issue in Indonesia with our younger generation, that education opportunity are less to them because of their education. Indonesia actually is facing about lower educations in our youth. So that's kind of like one of our problem, and our economic gap between the West and the East. We are blessed with demographic, but again, if we are not managing it well, it can be the other way around, right? It can cost you more problematic for the country. So I would say that is another challenge in this country. And our country are mainly, I would say, 60% are agriculture. That's one of our largest economic driver, aside from, again, mining and everything and oil, right? But I would say that actually a big challenge of us is also our agriculture is still mainly traditional one, traditional model approach, where actually it is challenging, because then we have to catch up with the development in agriculture, which is around the world. That's another one of the big issue in Indonesia if we want to compare with Vietnam. Thailand, I think we're behind Thailand, but even with Vietnam, which now fast growing, Indonesia has to catch up a lot in our agriculture. One of the issue is that lacking in added value of our basic agriculture production, which is 60% of our people are in the agriculture sector. So those gaps are actually one thing that this country has an opportunity to develop. On the other hand, it is a big challenge for the government and all stakeholders that are working to build the economic in this country.
And can you give us an example of how microfinancing helps an individual, so if we're talking about a farmer or a gold miner, what their life was maybe like before and how it can actually change lives and lift that family out of poverty?
Well, my experience actually coming from my work with all these partners, microfinance partners. I think the first thing with this contribution by microfinance to the household is that giving them the chance to be included in financial activity in a more formal way. For example, now that there is an institutions that actually you can put your extra money saving there, which you can trust. Like before, you might only put it in your cabinet where maybe in the village it's not easily robbed. That's not the case, but you may use it to the things that maybe you didn't plan. But by having a financial institution that you can save your extra money, then actually you can put a planning on the extra money that you have. That's actually one very basic things. On the lending side, as kind of like we know, the lower level income people, when they need extra money, mainly they are very much depending on their family, their friend, where actually their family and also their friend sometimes may not have that money when you need it, right? So having a financial institutions there, we're talking about microfinance, mean actually financial sector for the household at the very bottom level, then it helps them because it gives them the opportunity that if they're planning it correctly, they know where they want to use the money. And then they also knows that how can I repay and everything because it comes from a discussion. So actually the financial sector, the microfinance help them actually also to sharpen their planning and everything in their business. So there is a financial institution that serve them.
And can you share a little bit about how effective you have experienced it as working? Because I've read like a lot of incredible reports of how powerful microfinancing can be.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've also read reports saying it doesn't really work and it actually hooks people into deeper poverty if the interest rates are difficult and it can cause more problems. And I've also read recently an article in the Washington Post that was about there's this idea that if you give people cash, it will destroy the economy and it will increase drinking and gambling and it will make it difficult for someone to keep up with their neighbor and cause all these problems. But interestingly, this article in the Washington Post was saying, if you give people money, it lifts the whole economy of the neighborhood because they spend locally and that money stays in the local economy and it spins round and it creates more growth and more opportunity for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually they've done studies that show that these kind of foreseen issues of more gambling or more drinking, or it's not coming out in the statistics, that people very much value the opportunity and use it in an incredible and inspiring way and perhaps a way more responsible way than those of us in Western countries or coming from middle income or higher income families would do with similar kinds of opportunities.
Yeah. I talk from my experience. The critics to that, I think, is still very important so that it pushed the microfinance work to always improve. One thing is that without a planning or a conscious of financial literacy inside the services, which is the lending and the saving, it prone to these kinds of things. Usage of money improperly, or on the other hand, that uncontrol of using the money that the borrower is borrowing. So that's on the household side. So I think without a literacy, then I would say the challenge of microfinance to work is becoming bigger because people has different choices. And then even when you have the money to tomorrow, you can plan different things. So without the literacy and without monitoring from the microfinance institutions carefully, then I agree, it may cause even the other way, like over indebtedness and things like that, or misuse of the money that later on will become a problem with them. On the other side of the coin, I think one of the critical things which the argumentations of why it doesn't work is responsibility finance. It has been starting where all these non-governmental organizations, the large one, even the multilateral, pushing responsible finance, which is mean, for example, that you have to report your interest rate. That's kind of like one thing how to do it. And then second, like you have to transparent to your client of what does it mean of interest rate and how much actually you're charging. So putting a system that push microfinance to also have to follow a certain things that push them to be responsible, which we call by responsible finance, is one also important in the ecosystem. Otherwise, you will left with demand and supply. Well, anyway, the demand is so huge from the client. Why don't I put a higher interest rate? So responsible finance is something new, I think, even in the world. It's been there many years, but how actually you want to put the responsible finance implemented in really up to the bottom of the financial structure, that's still a challenge. So I agree with that. So I think the two things that very much important is that for microfinance to realize that they have to improve all the time. There's nothing like one thing I'm doing good and then it's forever like that. No. So you have to also improve yourself. So there has to be awareness from the microfinance to wanting to work for the client. That's one thing. The second thing is, again, this demand on supply, because there is no financial institutions other in such area. So you have no choice. So if there is no structure that you have to push a microfinance to be responsible, so they do it. So they do as what they wanted. So competition is much more higher now, which on one hand helps. If people are literate, they can choose. Mm-hmm. But again, on the other hand, I agree. If much more microfinance institutions are playing in one area, then they can go to over-indebtedness, because then everybody wants to push just portfolio. So I would say it has to be both sides. Educating the people, the community, the household here in the borrower is critical. And educating the financial institutions in a standard that responsible finance, that's also critical. So it has to be both sides and done by the ecosystems who is surrounding them. So non-governmental organizations should work both sides, microfinance also, and on the household. Government also has to empower through a regulation and system that both sides, the financial institutions and also the community. So that's kind of like my thought based on my experience working with microfinance institutions.
For me, I think what's really interesting is when we were all talking earlier, what came out of that conversation was this notion that actually we're talking about the people that are most affected by the issues of our time. Mm-hmm. And so we're talking about the farmers that are most affected mm-hmm. by climate issues, mm-hmm. by pollution issues. We were talking about the miners that are mm-hmm. most affected by mm-hmm. poison. Right. And at the moment are trapped mm-hmm. and have to work in those kinds of conditions. Mm-hmm. And they have no choice, because it's that or there's nothing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the opportunity of the work that you're doing, where you're bringing microfinancing and greenness, mm-hmm. sustainability mm-hmm. into the picture, which actually means that the people that you're working with are able to make choices that change these issues actually at the bottom of this pyramid that we know exists, and they're really on the front line of these issues. And none of us want to live in a world where we know that everything that comes into our lives, all the products that we have, everything that we're eating, or the jewelry that we're wearing, is coming at such a mm-hmm. intensely
Right.
disgusting
Right.
and painful human
Right.
price.
Agree. Yes. Yes.
I'm interested in that side of it, how this work
Mhm.
actually really makes a difference from the ground up.
When you are doing a financial institution, you are good at that. You are good at numbers. Okay. You calculate everything and then this works. When you're adding kind of like the services, how you look at the environment, how actually your street vendor throwing waste, or how actually they cook, whether actually that it is safe, it is what for the client and everything. What does it mean in terms of economic transaction? Is it now additional operational? So become the pricing is high, that it will affect the financial activity. So I would say that it is a challenge still for microfinance to include all the other plus plus. Is it health, for example? Let's say the Grameen. The Grameen model, mainly their members or their client are women. What is woman prone to, for example? Health when they're maternal, for example. So the issue is not only giving them a loan, but are they accessing the right food when they're pregnant? Are they able to go to the clinic to check up, let's say, during their pregnancy? So the microfinance actually encountering those situations because it's their client and they live with them daily, So it's not only like, okay, you give a loan and then they give it back the loan, but how you ensure their life are actually also betterment aside from giving the financial. What when they are pregnant, can they go to the hospital? Or when they are breastfeeding, how they're getting their food? So that's another angle that now we are adding up into the role of microfinance institutions, that it is a strategic and it is important if you want to use microfinance to improve quality life of their member, of the people, aside from just saving and loan. Not only microfinance, but a financial institution has to take into account other aspect, not as simple as just, okay, I can see your business is good and then you can pay me. But it's beyond that. What actually their business is doing to the environment, even up to what actually infrastructure is there that actually helping, that supporting my client in relation to certain, for example, health. If your client like Grameen, 100,000 of your client are women, they're prone to situation of what? For example, their health. How can you ensure that actually all these clients are also served well by the system out there aside from their financial? So whose responsibility is that? Then you said like, oh, it's government because it's health. Oh, it's an NGO because it's health. But again, aside from its NGO or its client, it's an NGO or its government, it is your client. You're the one who's interacting day to day with them, weekly with them. So I would say that actually it is an opportunity for financial institutions, microfinance institutions, to embed the other aspect into the financial services. It can be health.
So what you're saying is that the way that microfinance institutions are developing is to offer a whole holistic support structure.
Mhm. I would say that actually the microfinance spirit, the microfinance passion, the microfinance goal has to be beyond just that financial. The challenge is that how we put that beyond, which is it's in health, which is it is in environment, whether it's in the business, embed it into the relationship of the finance between the client or the members with the financial institution. My experience with that is always debatable with many microfinance. Why? Because microfinance one say like this, Meynar, we tried that already. And no, we have to be focused. Otherwise, we cannot be efficient in our financial work anymore because we try to embed so many things. But again, the other one say like this, Meynar, we're facing a challenge actually because we are so focused into this that the needs of our client are just beyond simple saving and loan. So based on that experience, I see we have to work out to make all these things part of the, I would say, spirit, mission. If it's services by by microfinance, it's even better. But to work it out, then you have to think, what is your business model? I'm sorry, I make this becoming more kind of like technicality, but if I want to embed health now in my services, who should I work with? It doesn't have to be the microfinance expanding themselves all of a sudden to become services in health, but who I work with. What is the model that I can work with health organizations or even with the clinic to ensure that actually when my clients are having a situation where they need to be served by a clinic, they can be served. On my work, we did like 5 basic things that mainly a household, let's say, need basically. And aside from the business, education and health actually comes always number 1 and number 2. So every area may have different their priority. So it is important for the financial institution to really understand the priority, and anyway they are in the field, so they can gather that information. And because the nice thing about microfinance institution, they are in the community, they understand the culture there. So basically, they understand. The challenge, I think, Amisha, is that how do you work on this? Because you need partner. My message is actually to find the right partner in working together with the microfinance. I've seen some example like that, which is successful. Like you work with different types of organizations, you work with different type of business to provide that quality that you aim to your client. Mm-hmm. It can be in health, it can be a technology to enhance their business. It can be in quality of life with regards to energy, where you don't want to learn about renewable energy because it's another another technicality, right? But you work with them to provide that. So I would say that should be the directions of financial sector, the microfinance who's working in the field.
And when you talk about these institutions, so now there are quite a lot of different institutions that almost like in the same way that NGOs would be set up, people are setting up these institutions, and each institution might have a different emphasis and personality to it.
Great things about this past years of movement is actually the existence of this, I would say, impact business, which is in Indonesia, it is kind of like growing now. I myself actually are now engaged with numbers of impact business that we coach them. A lot of now younger generation, they want to make an impact. I also kind of like amazed with them where they came and then they said like, yeah, but I want to, right from the beginning of I work, I want to see how my work are actually impacting mainly the lower level income people. So the movement is now in Indonesia are, I would say, are great that give an opportunity for the sector like microfinance to work with them in making better or improving the community. For example, I'll give an example of one impact business that specific work is actually to help women getting more income by weaving. The weaving has its own technicality. Somebody teach them how to make the pattern that actually sellable and then buy it from them and then sell it. That's one thing that I wouldn't advise microfinance to do. But these women are a client of financial sector because this impact business actually are looking at empowering these women to have a better quality and then sell them. At the very start, it's okay. But then when you scale their business, the additional working capital coming from where? Some impact business may give more money for them to grow. 10 women, 20 women, that's okay. But when you want to scale up into 1,000 women, then it's a large of working capital. That's where I think your relationship with microfinance can work, because then you can introduce this woman that you are helping, this community, that when it comes to stages where you need additional working capital, then you can borrow from the microfinance.
Do these financial institutions work collaboratively with the people that they're working with to also take in their wisdom and knowledge? Because a lot of what you're saying is, well, these institutions, we go and we educate and we show them this and we show them that. But something that I've understood is that there's a huge amount of wisdom and actually a deeper connection to the skills and the land and a way of life and an understanding of how to do things. Sometimes I feel is missing in development, that NGOs or institutions come in and say, you do it this way. And they don't take into account, like actually say, wait, how would you do it? Like, if you can improve this, what is it that you think needs to be improved? Because obviously the farmers or the miners, like they know, because they're the ones that are there all the time.
I totally agree with you, Amisha. What I mean is this: when I'm talking about microfinance, what I'm referring is actually a microfinance which are very local based. So when we say microfinance, actually, when I was working with a credit union, it's in, let's say, in Kalimantan, is actually a local microfinance. So they themselves are part of the community. They themselves understand the culture there and the local wisdom. I agree with you totally. And what I'm saying is that they themselves are the microfinance herein. I would say that actually knows the culture, understand, and then when I say a learning, actually it's both side learning. It's the community and them together learning because they're part of the community. I agree with you when you're saying when numbers of NGO are coming in, they say you have to do it that way. And I have experienced myself the differences, and then some successful, some failure when you want to do it top down. Like, okay, again, you're bringing new technology, new understanding, new knowledge. But then the most critical, I agree with you, is that you understand what's local, you modify, you enhance, you improve, but you're not changing.
Hello, this is Amisha. We are just taking a little break from the conversation here. On behalf of myself and the team, I want to say thank you for being part of creating a beautiful future. We make this for you so that we will all have the vision, wisdom, and activism we need at this time to weave a new narrative. Can you help us with this? You can do that by making a monthly donation to the podcast to cover our costs. Just the equivalent of a fair trade banana you might eat or a chai latte you might drink whilst you listen to this will make a huge difference to us. Head to www.thefutureisbeautiful.co/community to become a monthly patron. And the other thing is to tell your friends about this podcast so they can tune in too. Send them a message or post on social media and let them know what you love about it. And whilst you're at it, leave us a review. And now, back to the conversation. Thank you for your loving beauty. Can you tell us, Meynar, more about your role? Like, are you part of one of these institutions, or what exactly is it that you're doing in this space?
I advise some numbers of microfinance in different ways, and in how they improve the quality of their services into their members. And also I'm sitting as a commissioner in one microfinance where my role is actually helping them to structure a better product.
So the financial institutions come to you asking you for help?
Yeah.
So I know that you've done a lot of work in Aceh, and you were there after the tsunami in 2004, which of course created a whole load of devastation across Asia. And this was one of the areas of Indonesia that was most affected. Can you share more about your experience?
First thing is we support restructuring the access to finance for business that crushed by the tsunami. And because of the situations at that time is chaotic, mainly the support for the lower business. It's again much more challenging. So we do help small medium business to go back into their business. And there's one story that actually I would remember because actually it is teaching me more rather than actually I am giving to that business, but they are giving me back something. So this woman and her husband are baking bread. So their business is, it's not bakery business, but they just bake and then they sell to the even very small kiosks. And they lost everything during the tsunami because they are actually in the area where hit it a lot. And there are different programs at that time by the UN that help them rehabilitate. But many actually business, not many lah, but quite number of the business. Why I particularly remember them because again, rehabilitating businesses about their work ethics. And they're working very hard. And they say at that time, Meynar, I don't know whether what type of business we should do because all the kiosk that buy my bread anyway is not there anymore. And if I build this business, I have to sell it through kiosk, which is now I'm waiting whether another people are helping them also to build their kiosk. But again, I remember then they said like, but these financial institutions give us the opportunity. They say, just start your business and we'll think how actually your business will be eventually able to go back again to the situation. So they say, I think what I learned about their business is that they work hard, and then they say, I actually do not know how it is going to be able to be back as what it's before, but we just have the faith into that, and then being responsible to the lender, move us to really work hard on that one, and how actually the system that the ecosystem, I would say, help them, not only the financial sector, but now there is an organization that help them to market their product, and they are able to stand up. And one time, this Ibu say like this to me, actually, I wouldn't say that the tsunami is fortunate. Nobody will say that. But it's true that actually I get the trust that even after a very crash situation, you can still, how do you say it?
Create something.
Create something. And even they say, I would say better than I before. That's because of hard work, given the opportunity, and then my relationship with different new horizons enable me to see new things and even give us the opportunity as husband and wife to look at better than what even before. And they say that even this, I can look good things from disasters happening, but they say that getting a support from different type of institutions really help us. It gives us actually a spirit that yes, we can gain more. And one time, this Ibu called me. He said like this, Ibu Meynar, I got an invitation to get an award. I said, from who? And from an institution, which actually their award are kind of like considered high awarding. I myself, I'm so happy for her. And she said to me like this, can you accompany me? I said, why me? No, because you're part of people who's giving me the opportunity to look beyond disastrous business of mine. And I said, no, bring the other people, your whoever that you think, to this award. But what she's saying is this, she's getting an award, which I'm so proud. But again, I said to her, the award is given because it's of your hard work, your ability to look at the good things coming out from the situations, which is very difficult, and your ethics to work. And you told me that I use every single money that I get from every support, including from a financial sector, every single lie that I put back to recover the life that I had before, and even I got better than before.
Where do you see the potential of everything that we've been talking about today in terms of where it takes us in the future?
It gives community, household, a chances to be served by what they need. And the more people are engaging with the community in the right way, are giving more chance for the community, the household, to learn, to get the services, to get their basic right. Because at the end, my opinion is this: the system should work for them also. It's not only for made up, but what would be the system works for them? So if you ask me how this microfinance brought to them, is giving them a window of opportunity to get the support, get the environmental understanding on how to build their sustainable income, sustainable work, sustainable in terms of energy, sustainable in terms of service to health. That's where I think the potential of more and more services serving this bottom of the pyramid. Their numbers are huge. The demography in Indonesia are very challenging. So it cannot be a work of one or two. It's supposed to be work of another. And the cost of doing that is huge. So collaborative from other stakeholders is important. And at the end, I hope people will look at beyond business. People will look at really for the betterment of the community.
Thank you so much for your time today and for sharing your work and some of your story with us. How do we get in touch with you if we want to find out more? Is there a website for your organization?
Yes, we do have websites. So I'm with a microfinance institution called Bina Arta Ventura. So it's binaarta.net.id.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for spending your precious time with us. As always, you can find links to everything we mentioned in this episode, download our book, and discover so much more over on the blog. We don't believe in selling you things you don't need through this podcast, and so it's made possible with you, our community. If you loved this and would like to fund our show with a monthly donation or join our online group to connect with other listeners, please visit www.thefutureisbeautiful.co and click on Community and Support. Please also share with friends, hit subscribe, and leave us a review so we can grow. Those gold stars really help others find us, so these ideas can spread. Here is to us, creating a beautiful future together. The Future is Beautiful is made by an all-female team working voluntarily or on reduced rates until our listener support grows. If you have been moved by anything you heard here, please donate the equivalent of buying us a drink. All donations make a huge difference to us and will allow us to keep doing this and remain advertising free. Until next time, I leave you with this question: how will you create beauty in the world?